Thank you, Dawn, for that introduction, and thanks for having me here today. It's great to be here with you all. Yes, in that story, it was an interesting story to report because it was, at the sort of the beginning of the year when people are in a time of reflection on the year past and agenda setting for the year ahead. And what really emerged was, and the headline kind of says it all, that that companies are sort of graduating from kind of early stage sustainability efforts to more sophisticated, moving beyond the low-hanging fruit and trying to tackle the harder challenges, the deeper supply chain challenges. And that's both because of the urgency of the problems that we face: climate change, biodiversity degradation, endangered species, and for consumers. We've all seen the research showing that consumers want more sustainability and more values from their brands, and that research is incomplete, I'll say, because we don't always know what consumers will and won't pay for and how they will apply their values to their actual purchases. But the interest is there, and brands are recognizing that. And so with fur and animal materials, it's clear that there is a trend away from fur and a little bit, and also leather. Leather is a little more complicated for a number of reasons, but there's a clear interest from consumers in moving away from these materials because they are seeing the connections between their production and climate change and the role of animal agriculture in accelerating the climate crisis. And with fur in particular, I think the shift away from it and the sort of consumer awareness has accelerated during the pandemic, as more research has shown the connections between planetary health and human health, and the risks of disease, sort of migration of viruses and diseases from between species. And so I think brands are seeing all of this and starting to look either for, to just sort of design for out of their products, or they're starting to look for replacements and that are not plastic, I would say. There's a lot of sort of plastic-based fake fur, but there is a growing field of research on more sustainable, planet-friendly alternatives to fur. And I would say they're a little bit or a lot farther behind leather. There's the same shift or trend in leather. There's a lot of leather alternative research coming out, and products that show real promise for replacing leather in in luxury, all the way through, across the price spectrum, I would say, in fashion, and fur is sort of following that. With just, it's just sort of a little bit behind, but there is research that's happening, and as we've seen, companies, Kering last year, which owns, the owner of Gucci and Balenciaga and Saint Laurent, Kering took a big step when it announced that at the group level it was phasing out fur, and a number of others. The list grows of companies that are announcing a ban on fur. And I think it's not gone completely. There are plenty of brands still using it. I think what's important to think about, and what is a sort of opportunity for brands, is to to recognize the potential for leadership. We're in a moment where if people are starting to recognize, potential issues or ramifications of a certain material, some consumers are moving away, but some might not be, themselves, but they often sort of value a brand showing leadership on an issue, and showing, brands that have, that want to take a stand on something, and so I think, brands might not necessarily need to take a stance on something like fur to, in order to keep all of their customers at this point. But I would say that it's an opportunity to show leadership and to really sort of be able to engage with and really build relationships with customers more, by showing that they want to take a stance on an issue like fur. And going back to that article, this is a year when consumers and brands, are really waking up to the realities that we are facing. And a few years ago, it might have been enough to say, we're using efficient light bulbs in our stores, or we are reducing our waste by a certain amount. But the last year and this year are really, the pressure is on, and brands that are able to stay ahead of the curve and really show action and leadership are the ones that I think are going to succeed the most in the future. And because consumers are shifting, and the world, is changing, and so it's sort of future proofing a little bit, and really just sort of present proofing, just being prepared for the changes that we're seeing in the supply chain and in consumer demand. So it's really a time to sort of accelerate action on everything, across the board, including, renewable energy in the supply chain, and on the materials that a company uses in its products, such as fur. So thank you for having me today. I hope that was helpful, and it was great to be here.